Okay, with pleasure. I won't delay you too much with anything I might have to say. Let me turn to the real experts. So if I could ask Mr. Aggrey Tisa Sabuni, the economic advisor to the President, to talk to us about the current economic situation. Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Juba is quite fine, lots of sunshine. The current thing that is the focus of attention and discussion among the leading cycles in South Sudan as well as our development partners center around the austerity measures that have been put in place following the decision by the government of South Sudan to shut down production of oil. Of course, we know the shutdown in the oil sector is a culmination of quite a number of, let me say, contentious issues between the Republic of South Sudan and its northern neighbor, the Republic of Sudan. Mainly on issues that represent unfinished business, issues carried forward or carried over from the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. All of you may be aware that quite a number of issues remained unresolved as of 9 July last year, when the South became a sovereign state. Comes to mind the issue of the unfinished border demarcation business, the issue of ABA, the issue of the contested areas along the border, oil sharing agreement issues, water security, nationality, all these kinds of things have, as well as Southern Blue Nile and Southern Kordofan. All these are issues related to the implementation of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. It's been in such a way that no agreement or no credible agreement was reached on each of these issues I've mentioned. As a result, it became difficult to determine how much South Sudan should pay as transit fee for the export of its oil through the oil route to Port Sudan. I'm sorry to say Khartoum took advantage of the lack of agreement on this to do what it did, seizing South Sudanese oil, making it difficult for ships that were already contracted to come and load South Sudanese oil for export, and they proceeded to siphon off from the pipeline South Sudanese oil meant for the export market. Support was provided to the two sides to reach an amicable agreement or settlement on these issues. Unfortunately, by the 20th of January this year, that kind of support did not yield any tangible fruit. The government of South Sudan, with the backing of its people, found itself with no option other than to turn off the flow of oil. This in turn, on the part of South Sudan, has enormous consequences or repercussions, some of which are yet to be assessed. But considering the following, that South Sudan depends to the extent of 100% of its foreign exchange earnings on the export of oil. And to the extent of something between 96 and 98% of its revenue into the budget, again on this single commodity. The decision definitely was not taken lightly, and once it was taken, the consequences are not difficult to determine or to assess. It means the budget will not be implemented the way it was originally prepared, at the level of almost 10 billion Sudanese pounds, South Sudanese pounds. It means drastic cuts have to be made, making it become an austerity budget rather than a normal budget, now at the level of 4, just slightly below 50% of what it was originally meant to be, which means the capital budget in particular is sacrificed by a large extent. The budget that goes to make operations possible is sacrificed. Tentatively, the salary or the compensation budget is still left intact, but it will be subject to review. The result is that the provision of services is terribly compromised. The execution of badly needed development projects, especially in the area of infrastructure, is compromised. The road connectivity programs meant to connect South Sudan with itself is more or less put on hold, and so on and so on. We are now left to grapple with aftermath. On the positive side, the resolve of the population, the overwhelming support of the population to the leadership of the country is a tremendous asset. It also means that the sectors that had been the mainstay of the economy in South Sudan, subsistence though it is, crop production, animal husbandry, fishing, that had been neglected over the last 6 years, are now actively being brought into use or into operations. The focus on one commodity is now being revisited. The drive for diversification is now in top gear. I think even our reliance on the neighbors to supply us with everyday life necessities and so on is now also going to be under the microscope, so that at least for basic necessities and so on, this should be supplied locally. Considering our legacy, including the last 30 years, 21 years of which were taken up by the struggle for liberation and liberty, and the interim period, there was virtually no opportunity to save for the rainy season, which has already dawned upon us. So the government will be able to survive depending on how austere the budget actually becomes, for maybe up to a year or more. And thereafter, every effort has to be made, not only to sacrifice, but also to increase the revenue from non-oil, from what it is, to substantially, increasingly assume a greater proportion of the budget. Maybe over the next 2 to 3 years, at least up to 20% of the budget must come from non-oil revenue sources. This is also an opportunity. Having said all this, it was a difficult decision to make, with difficult consequences, dire consequences, but it was absolutely necessary to make, and now we are left grappled with the aftermath. If there is need to say more, Mr. Chairman, I'll do so at a later stage of discussion. Thank you.